I was a kid, me and my friends got into all kinds of trouble. We stayed out after curfew, cut our own bangs, and watched movies that were way too scary for us. But like most of the other kids our age, we never did anything that could hurt someone else or get us arrested. When it comes to murder, no one ever expects the killer to be a child. It just doesn't make sense that anyone so young could be dangerous enough to take the life of another human being. That's why today we're looking at a murder that went unsolved for 4 years. The attack was so brutal that the investigators didn't even consider their killer could be a 12-year-old girl. In 1992, Katie Ratcliffe was 18 years old and had her whole life ahead of her. She had a loving family, a great group of friends, and she was training to become a hairstylist. In the future, she wanted to own her own salon. In the summer of that year, Katie decided to end things with her boyfriend, and to take her mind off their breakup, she and her friends went out to a club. According to her friends, they had an amazing time with Katie at Ragamuffin's nightclub in Chamberley, Surrey. They partied until the early hours of the morning, and after the club closed, Katie started to walk home alone, but she would never make it home. The next morning, Katie's body was found just a couple of streets away from the nightclub. She'd been stabbed at least 27 times all over her body. Some wounds suggested that a knife had gone straight through her. Investigators were horrified to discover that the killer had even stabbed Katie in her private areas, although there was no evidence that she'd been assaulted. The murder was so vicious and brutal, and the investigators thought it must have been carried out by a man. With how many stab wounds Katie had, they figured the killer must have been a strong adult male, probably in his 30s. They thought when they started looking into potential suspects, it wouldn't be as difficult as it was to find the killer. After all, they'd taken the murder weapon with them, and somebody must have seen a creepy guy following Katie just as the club was closing. This wasn't the case. Katie's family was heartbroken. As time went on, the chances of finding her killer became less and less. 4 years went by without a suspect and without justice for Katie. It took so long for Katie's murderer to be caught because the investigators were looking in totally the wrong direction. After seeing what was done to Katie, how could anyone imagine a 12-year-old girl could do that? Sharon Carr was a troubled child. Her mom was violent and abusive, her dad was an alcoholic, so she had a tough upbringing to say the least. She was born in Belize in 1981, but only lived there for a short time before her parents migrated to the UK. According to her old teachers, Sharon was a nice girl at first. She was always polite and helpful in class. But as she got older, her behavior steadily got worse and worse. She was described as being disruptive and always seeking attention. It was also reported that Sharon had a fascination with killing animals, specifically pets from her neighborhood. Someone she knew in school even claimed that she once fried live hamsters. Killing animals is actually a well-known red flag that a child may be working towards a troubling future. It's common behavior of people that grow up to become serial killers. The notorious murderer Jeffrey Dahmer is known to have killed animals as a kid too. It was clear that something was going on with Sharon, but nobody seemed to take her bad attitude or violent outbursts seriously. That was until 1994, exactly 2 years after Katie was murdered, when Sharon would strike again. While at school, Sharon convinced another student called Anne-Marie Clifford to go to the bathroom with her. She trapped Anne-Marie in a stall and stabbed her once in the back, then stood over Anne-Marie and watched as she died. Luckily for Anne-Marie, a staff member and a small group of students came into the bathroom just in time. Anne-Marie survived her attack and Sharon was arrested, and that was when her true colors really started to show. While she was awaiting her trial, Sharon was sent to an assessment center to see if she was mentally capable of going to trial. During her stay, she attempted to strangle 2 members of staff. This didn't do anything to help her case, and 2 counts of actual bodily harm were considered at her trial. She was found guilty and sent to Bullwood Hall Young Offenders Institution for 2 years. It's important to keep in mind that she was sent away for attacking Anne-Marie. Nobody knew yet that Sharon had murdered Katie, but like a lot of killers who have no regret for their crimes, Sharon struggled to keep her mouth shut. In her mind, she'd already gotten away with the murder and probably didn't consider that she could still get into trouble when she started bragging about her previous crimes. Sharon was known for keeping a diary. What nobody knew was that what she wrote was disturbing, to say the least. She often wrote about Katie's murder and went into gruesome detail about the last moments of her life and how much Sharon enjoyed watching her die. This was the first piece of evidence that alerted the staff at Bullwood. As Sharon became more comfortable in her new surroundings, she started to become more open with the staff. Although she didn't try to harm anyone during her time at Bullwood, she did threaten to kill other staff and inmates multiple times, and that told them she was still dangerous and capable of violence. evidence. One day, a member of staff overheard a conversation Sharon was having on the phone with her family. She was talking to them about Katie's murder. This definitely started to ring alarm bells. The final nail in the coffin for Sharon was when she told a staff member that she had a crush on, all about how she murdered Katie Ratcliffe, and she couldn't believe she'd gotten away with it. After that, Sharon was arrested for Katie's murder. During her police interviews, Sharon gave a few different stories about what happened to Katie. She readily admitted that she was the one to stab her, but in some versions of the story, she had accomplices. Sharon claimed that 2 boys had taken part in the murder as well. She said they kidnapped Katie and assaulted her in the back of a car before Sharon killed her. She even went as far to name the 2 boys who allegedly took part in the attack, but when police interviewed the boys, they both had alibis and were ruled out of the murder. Usually when a suspect lies or changes part of their story, it's a pretty good indicator they're lying about their involvement. According to Dr. Ray Bull, a professor of criminal investigation, liars have a dilemma. They have to make up a story to account for the time of wrongdoing, but they can't be sure what evidence the interviewer has against them. So it's possible that Sharon tried to lie to make it look like she had less involvement, or she could pass some of the blame onto someone else. They couldn't dismiss her as a suspect because there was too much evidence against her. Sharon knew things about the murder that only the killer would know, such as specifics about Katie's injuries, and she knew about a bracelet that had been stolen from Katie after she was murdered. This was information only known by the detectives and Katie's family. Sharon went to trial for Katie's murder in 1997, 5 years after the murder. Due to her age at the time of the murder, Sharon got a lot of media attention and became known as the second youngest female murderer to ever be convicted in the UK. Snippets of her diaries were released to the public and were all over the news. The nation totally captivated by these insights into Sharon's mind. In one entry she wrote, "Every night I see the devil in my dreams, sometimes even in my mirror, but I realize it was just me." This entry earned her a nickname in the media, the Devil's Daughter. Sharon's trial lasted for 4 weeks, and every single person on the jury found her guilty of Katie's murder. She was sentenced to serve a life sentence in prison with a minimum of 12 years. This caused public outcry, especially from Katie's parents, who thought it was insane that they would allow someone as dangerous as Sharon to potentially leave prison after only 12 years. However, her stay in prison didn't last all that long. Shortly after she was incarcerated, Sharon started attacking guards and other prisoners on a regular basis. It got so bad that Sharon was sectioned under the Mental Health Act of 1983, meaning she was so dangerous that she had to be put somewhere where she could be protected and treated for whatever was causing her to act this way. She was transferred to Broadmoor Psychiatric Hospital, famous in the UK for housing some of the most violent criminals in history. It was there that Sharon was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. This is a mental illness that can cause someone to have hallucinations, delusions, and extreme mood swings. Sharon remained there until Broadmoor went through a change and became a male-only hospital. Because of this, she was transferred to HMP Bronzefield, a women's prison, where she will probably stay until the end of her life, unless she recovers enough to be safe around people in the outside world. Criminal psychologist Gordon Tessler agrees that it's unlikely Sharon will ever be released. This is an extremely dangerous person because she's clearly prepared to kill without an adequate motive. That makes her conduct very unpredictable and very dangerous. I've definitely got my fingers crossed that Sharon stays locked away forever. We can only hope that now Katie's family has found peace and can enjoy their lives again. What do you guys think of this case? It really goes to show that there's really no limit when it comes to committing such evil acts. I can't wait to see what you guys think in the comments below. Thank you for watching today's video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay up to date with all future videos.